This is O-Talk, a podcast covering the Ontario Hockey League. From people within the game. Oh, yeah.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the O-Talk podcast. I'm Jordan Jacklin, joined alongside Frankie Benvenuti and Josh Kim. Before we get into all the action of the OHL playoffs so far, let's just break it down and just how we're doing individually, starting with you, Josh.
So happy, man. Oh my God. The vibes in Hamilton were electric. We got that graphic out. See you later, Bulldogs. They're not coming back for sure. We've been over this in a previous episode. Feel free to click back and go take a listen to that. But, oh, man, that has got to be one of the craziest games I've ever seen. We're going to dive into it a little bit, I think, a little later. But, like, the Colts are moving on, maybe. And that's why I'm so happy right now. So, yeah. How are you doing,
you get to share the joy there, Frankie.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually happy because Josh texted the group chat after Oshawa won game 3 and asked me if I was worried. No, I was not worried, Josh. But, thank you for your concern.
Tough. They played you guys.
They did, yeah, and I think we'll get into this in a bit, but it feels good. I walked back into TD Place today after a couple of weeks. Whether it was in Gatineau or in Oshawa, we didn't really have a home game for 2.5 weeks, so feels good to be back home.
Well, I don't get to share the same joy that you guys do because Mississauga Steelheads have been eliminated. They did put up quite a fight, though. I think it went longer than most people would expect. And we'll definitely break that down more as we head into this podcast. But let's just start off with some news that's been going around. And we're seeing a lot of amateur tryouts now, specifically for the Toronto Maple Leafs regarding goaltending. What did you guys think of Nick Chenard getting the backup in Florida yesterday?
Well, I know Nushka's backing up tonight.
I know Nushka's backing up tonight. Nice. Honestly, both options not great. Clearly, I don't think they had any other choice. That's all I'm gonna say on the matter, because if you look at Nick Chenard's stats and Matt Onushka's stats, they're not great, even at the OHL level. If you're under a 900 in the OHL, that's pretty bad. So
here's my question. Like, if these guys, get to say that they were NHL backups for this do you think that helps them in getting like a better spot on like a U Sports team, or do you think it has any effect at all?
No, it makes no
absolutely
difference.
Not.
It's like, they put in the effort, they went all right there just to join the Leafs right away. You don't think it means anything?
No, I don't think it means anything.
Jordan, if the Leafs called me, I would be there in 4 hours, and it's a 5-hour drive.
Yeah.
So
yeah, same here. So like, am I going to play goalie after that? I really think U Sports teams, I know not all of them are like crazy about like their scout work and everything, but I feel like in some capacity they do their due diligence and be like, okay, what's the situation going on here? Did they just pick randomly about who is available? Maybe Nick Chenard's vacationing in Florida. Maybe Matt
That's what I was wondering. Like, was he already
vacationing
there?
In Florida? Like, he might have already been there because, well, we all know Owen Sound got swept. Windsor also got swept. So, like, I was thinking that's the first thing that came to mind. I was like, what the hell is Nick Chenard doing in Florida? What is Matt Onushka doing in Florida? Like cool experience. I love it for those guys. They might not get that ever again, which I think is really cool. So I want to touch on that. But like, come on, let's be real. They're not there because their stats were all glamorous in the OHL and that they're actually going to see any game time. I don't think so.
And this is a OHL show, but I think his name is it Damien Cox that writes for the Toronto Star?
Yes.
I think that's his name,
yeah.
Right? He wrote a column about how this is like not a good thing for hockey. Like, this is
I've seen
degrading.
Well, there's a lot of people. I don't think
there's
it's
a
just
lot of
him
people like
that.
I'm not going to get into that. I don't really care that much. I think it is what it is. I think it's cool to like get more people involved in hockey, but like, man, if you're taking like such a polarizing take and being like, oh, this is so bad for the NHL, like, what are you doing? Like,
I think I will say I'll take any chance to dunk on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Just kidding, not really. But this one is like, this is what, like the third or fourth time this has happened this year. Like,
yeah, but like, it's not we're getting off track here because it's not an NHL show.
It's not just
but, like,
a Leafs thing, though.
This
it's
is not
with
a
Edmonton.
Leafs thing. This is the meaningless games, man. Meaningless games. Like, come on. We have Connor Timmins playing forward tonight. Like, come on.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the whole cap rules in the NHL suck to begin with.
Yeah, the cap rules are a whole other conversation. But anyways,
boys. Yeah, let's
I hope
get
Nick
back
Chenard
to the
has
OHL.
fun. I hope Matt Onushka has a grand old time. They're probably, Nick Chenard's probably never going to forget that. But like, come on, let's get to the real news, Jordan. And
it's all pales in comparison to David Ayers.
Okay, yeah, a couple notable signings here. Let's break it down.
Signings? What signings am I breaking down?
Oh boy.
Logan Morrisson.
Logan Morrisson.
Oh
Ottawa
yeah.
67's legend has signed a 3-year entry-level contract with the Seattle Kraken. By the way, it's worth noting as I take over the hosting duties of this show, Seattle actually has a pretty impressive OHL prospect pool because David Goyette also just signed his entry-level contract from
Yeah, I
Sudbury.
saw that.
He had another fantastic year, so that was well earned. Logan Morrison, Frankie, before I toss it to you, because I know you're gonna pump this guy's tires to the roof. Logan Morrison, absolute stud, really, really good OHL player. I saw on Twitter he had he had a point in every game of the series in Ottawa, Oshawa, but like that extended his playoff point streak to like 30 something games. That is absurd. First of all, to even like put that in perspective, that is crazy. But like I said, very, very well-deserved contract. And again, him, Goyette, Ty Nelson, like, yeah, I don't know, man. Like, I think Jagger Firkus is in that mix, or he's not an OHL guy, but like those three, that's a pretty impressive prospect pool, like just taken from Ontario. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
First of all, with this one, I think it's interesting. They actually released the financials of it as well, and I believe
we don't see that very often. It was
that was odd
but
to me.
Logan Morrison's going to be a rich man.
But $950K, that is, I believe, maxed out rookie deal. Correct.
Can you get performance bonuses too, like the standard player performance bonuses?
I'm not sure, but
we'll
I find it interesting.
In 67's insider French.
Yeah, I have no idea about the details of the contract. This just happened today. We didn't know about it.
This is fresh news. At the time of recording, which is Tuesday, this broke like a couple hours ago. This is not, this is very fresh.
But I think what's interesting about that 950 number is it tells me that there may have been a little bit of a bidding war for Logan Morrisson because nobody just gives an undrafted free agent that kind of money if nobody else wants him. Right.
I like that take. Is that why it took so long? Do you think that's why it took so long?
You know what? It could have been. I think, again, this is really, really reading into that number and just about nothing else. But I think that's a very interesting piece of that. Josh, you mentioned a lot about his on-ice performance. I just want to add, like, you took all the on-ice stuff. It's incredible what he's done. I just think off the ice, he's a good human being. You know, he's a good kid. Ever since I met him, I've had nothing but positive interactions with him. So, I think Seattle fans, if he ever does end up in the NHL, they're going to love the kid. And, hopefully he continues to just be, one, really good on the ice, and two, just really good off of it as well, wherever he goes.
Well said. I think it was a long time coming. And like you said, maybe there was a bidding war. So I think Seattle definitely, I think they're doing their due diligence here. Saying that too much now, but, they're doing their homework. And I think we're going to start to see that a lot in the coming months with a lot of overagers ending their season. And the next one on the list, which is I think the second one that I only had two. It was the Morrisson one and this one. And I guess David Goyette if you count that. But James Hardie, someone we've talked about a lot on this show, as Toronto Metropolitan University alumni Kyle Cushman, so shout out to TMU alum and everybody, reported that James Hardie has signed an ECHL contract with the Cincinnati Cyclones.
Wait, really? I didn't even see that.
Yeah, this is the first time hearing of this as well.
Again,
when did this get reported?
Prepared. So yeah, he actually signed a professional contract today, as reported by Kyle Cushman. So I saw it on Twitter, and then Stephen Ellis.
It's because of my Twitter post that I did yesterday. I followed the series.
Yeah, sure. Cincinnati Cyclones definitely checked out Jordan Jacklin on Twitter and saw all the highlights. Yeah, for sure. I don't know. What do you guys think? I think this is really good. Again, long time coming. I'm going to keep saying that because I think a lot of these guys deserve a pro shot. I'm a little surprised it's in the coast, but good for James Hardie.
That's what I was going to say too. I find it weird that no American League team wants him. You would think that there's an American League team that's out of it and doesn't have anything to lose by trying him out that would probably say yes to that. But Jordan, you've seen him for 4 years now. Is it not weird that he's going to the coast now?
I do think it's very weird. Yeah, I mean, it's been weird even last offseason that he didn't end up anywhere and had to return to the Ontario Hockey League, as an overager. And you have to think he's going to light it up. I guess NHL teams might fear his play style. This isn't going to translate. They don't really see National Hockey League potential in terms of him. I don't think they think he could play a bottom six role, and they probably don't envision him having the skill to be a second or first liner at that level. But we're talking for AHL teams. It's hard to imagine him not being able to blossom into a top six forward. And I think we could honestly still see him at some point in an AHL deal next year, depending on his play at the ECHL.
As I go back to the report that I read. So Kyle Cushman says, and he's a trustworthy source in my opinion, James Hardie ranks 6th in the OHL over the past 2 seasons with 79 goals in 134 games. Really good. Mr. Steelhead, clearly, because he has all their franchise records. A lot of fans really happy to see this. A lot of scouts really happy to see this. And Stephen Ellis said scouts didn't really like his skating or defensive play, and he thinks he'll be a decent AHLer at some point. So just a fun note to add in that category. But again, I've seen James Hardie arguably just as much as Jordan has. Really good guy. Obviously a high-level skill guy, maybe not on the defensive side, but leadership-wise and offensively, one of the best players, I think, well, one of the best players the Steelheads have ever seen, but also one of the best players, dare I say, out of the last maybe 3 or 4 years that the OHL has seen, just being that prolific, reliable scorer on a Steelheads team that's trending in a different direction. So, congrats to James. Well-deserved, obviously, and I hope he kills it. And that's all I have to say.
I just have one thing to add with this one, because, with him, it's been a lot of, oh, we had a great year. Now let's do it again. Oh, we had 2 great years. Okay, let's do it again. And it just seems like he's in this continual cycle of he needs to prove himself. So my question is, when is somebody going to say, you know what, he's actually done enough to prove himself? I fear that it's going to be the same thing in the coast.
That's a phenomenal point, Frankie. I think that's a great point. Something that a lot of people don't talk about enough. He's been doing this ever since he stepped into the OHL. So, I mean, and the argument could easily be made. He was on everybody's list of how was he not drafted? So, I mean, next best thing. I really hope it works out. That's any professional route, I'd say is a good one to take.
No,
it's a very different scenario.
What team is Cincinnati with? What's their NHL affiliate?
I have no idea. It's been years since I worked in the coast, so it
doesn't typically matter for anybody that's not a goaltender, though.
Yeah. That sounds about right.
We're seeing it become a bit more of a developmental
if you're not
league,
Sebastian Kosa or Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen from a couple of years ago, or Felix Sandstrom even from Philly.
Well, goalies is pretty normal to play in the ECHL. I think it's actually relatively normal. That's
what I mean.
You can kind of bounce around from place to place, so it doesn't really matter. But anyways, Jordan, now let's shift to something you are prepared to talk about. This first and second round of the OHL playoffs. Just the last series just wrapped up yesterday at the time of this recording. So, I mean, let's break it down. I mean, we don't have a ton of time, so I think we just go back to our predictions from the last episode and just kind of go in, and we'll just see where it takes us.
Yeah, we can start with the West if you guys want, because obviously
we don't even need to do stats or anything. Just go eye vision or eye test, whatever.
Can we save the big one for the end, please?
Okay, you don't want to talk. Okay, we'll wait to talk about the one from the West.
Okay.
Let's. You know what? We went 1-8 down last time. Let's go 4-5 up this time.
Yeah, sure. So we're going to start with Saginaw Flint, because guess what? We projected that to be a close series, and it ends up being the the Saginaw Spirit, winning in Game 7, 4-3 in that series. Just insane, man, how the in terms of the way that went, Saginaw had that lead, and then they almost kind of coughed it up, but then were able to prevail in the end. Frankie, what did you think of that series from afar?
It was a little less high scoring than I thought it would be, oddly enough. But wow, I think that was the first ever all Michigan series we've had. Did it ever live up to the billing? I think it's just interesting to look at it from Game 3 on. Obviously Saginaw gets it to the 2-0 series lead, and then Flint from there wins 3 of 5, and it's very interesting to me, because I feel like if you played a best of 9 series in this one, it could go the other way. That's how close it was, So I know I picked Flint. I don't remember what you guys said. I think 2 of us picked Flint.
I picked Saginaw, I think.
Jordan's the only one that got this right, because I said Flint in 7. I was right about the 7 part, because I knew we all said it was going to be close. And a little related tidbit to this, I ended up watching a lot of OHL playoff games that were just on, just leaving it on in the background, just studying. It was actually really good. That's just my takeaway from it. The other series were really entertaining to watch. Yeah. Anyways, for Flint, I'm gonna be maybe a bit of a hot take here. They choked this series away.
I felt like that too.
There are 2 components. One that's kind of funny, but one that's actually statistically that should not happen. So apparently, according to the Saginaw broadcast in Game 7, because Flint opened the scoring in Game 7, Flint scored the first goal in 6 of those 7 games, and then proceeded to lose, obviously, in 7 games. So I don't know how you do that. start on time and then lose. Very strange. But I also want to shout out the third goal from Saginaw in Game 7. I don't know, Jordan, if we can roll the clip as I'm talking about this. Tristan Bertucci, man. Oh my God. I feel so bad for that guy. He collected a dump in and it bounced off his stick. Nathan Day wasn't even paying attention because he thought he was going to collect it, and Matthias Safavalov just like tapped it in. It was that is what nightmares are made of. Game 7, and that put Flint down 3-1, and then they ended up tying it, but they didn't end up winning. So that's kind of like my two main takeaways from this, is that I think Flint actually came in as the better team. They looked better, and Amadeus Lombardi took over, like I said. They just couldn't get it done, and that's kind of unfortunate because that's such a tight series, and usually one mistake is going to cost you, and it pretty much did every single game. So yeah, I mean, I'm glad we all kind of like were in agreement. See what I did there? We were all in agreement.
Word is banned at request of Kenny Walls, the 67's radio guy.
He said agreeance. I said agreement.
Agreeance is bad, is banned. And any other word that says we all agree with one another is banned.
Oh my God. All right.
Well, I don't agree. You guys were talking about the offense. I mean, what I find interesting is Saginaw. I mean, it wasn't necessarily Michael Misa. Like, he did a pretty good job, but he didn't necessarily have to be the best player on the team. You know,
no,
as you mentioned,
Safavalov was really good.
7 goals, 15 points in 7 games, and you see someone like Dean Lucas putting up 11 points in 7 games. Those guys were the general stars for the team.
All right, what series are we looking at next? Owen Sound, London, I guess, or Guelph and Sarnia?
Let's go Guelph and Sarnia. Yeah, let's go Guelph Sarnia. So
Sure.
Sarnia takes this series in 6 games. Generally interesting, you know, they open up game 1, 5-0. Then you'd see an overtime where Sarnia is able to win again, very tight, 5-4. They were up 3-0, up 3-1. And then suddenly in game 5, well, Guelph still has life, but that will not matter. In game 6, they win in overtime, 4-3. Josh, I'll start with you. What did you think of this series and how it all went down?
Well, my prediction was almost dead wrong. I said Sarnia was gonna like handle this no problem, and they didn't really do that. But that's not really because like Guelph was good, and I think a little better than people thought, but Sarnia was abundantly bad, like way worse than anybody thought. And I was like, wow. I was just strolling on Twitter and just seeing all the storylines. So like, I mean, I kind of get half marks for that prediction because I mean Sarnia was still came out on top, like I said, but like they didn't handle it in the best way. I think my main takeaway from the series, and I'll keep this short, and I want to keep this short going forward, is just like, how about Max Nemestikov and Sasha Pashtuov just torching their former teams left, right, and center? That was crazy to me. Max Nemestikov had like 4 goals in 5 games or 6 games, as Pashtuov had like the same like stat line. I just think that's really funny, like how like things can change like that, and you know they were both torching their former teams. But I think it was a good fight by Guelph. I didn't think like a lot of people probably didn't think they would even get there in the first place, but here we are.
Yeah, it's fascinating. You know, Ty Voigt only had 1 goal in the 6 games. It's not like, you know, it's necessarily lighting the lamp by any means. Nolan Burke scoring the game-winning goal in game 6
clutch
as well.
Gene, Nolan Burke is so clutch. Oh my goodness.
Well, shout out Luca Dalbalbaluz too, was pretty clutch in that game 6, having 2 points as well. And just a good outing. And I think there's only room for improvement in that regard, and we'll see how they can do in the second round. What are your thoughts generally on this, Frankie?
Yeah, you know, I was watching game 6 with just intensity. Like I felt that if Guelph pulled that off in overtime, they were going to win the series. Like that team, Sarnia had this series by the throat and very nearly lost control of it. And that, to me, is a very interesting storyline to watch because the hardest game to win is that 4th one. You know, that's one of the oldest tropes in hockey. And I think, you know, they have kind of drawn a little bit of a favorable matchup maybe with Saginaw in the second round. I think that is probably the least scary of the 4 teams left in the West. So we'll see how that goes. But man, if you were a Sarnia fan in those last 3 games of this series, you went from just on cloud 9 thinking this was over to you thought your team season was about to end.
Yeah, for sure, man. It was definitely a nail biter. And one series, really, to start off the 2 of the sweeps in the West, we're going to jump into London and Owen Sound. That one, I just can't believe it, especially game 4, 5-0. Wow. And you've seen the likes of Denver Barkey score, Logan Mailloux 3 points in that game for just really strong outings. Frankie, what did you see? I watched the overtime of game 3 too, so that I didn't watch too much of it, but I did watch game 3. But what were your thoughts, Frankie, on this series?
It went about how I thought it would. I think London has the clutch gene. Owen Sound really made the playoffs on their start. Like they were not good in the second half of the year. What I was really thinking when I saw the sweep was, what the hell was Josh Kim thinking when he picked Owen Sound to upset? So Josh, let's revisit your logic here.
Okay, we gotta go back.
Revisit the logic on this one.
I was waiting. I didn't expect any of you to tee it up because I was so ready to just say, "Boy, was I so wrong on this."
Oh, I had to take a shot at you for that.
Oh my god, I said Owen Sound in like 7, and you know what? I thought Colby Barlow was gonna carry them to the promised land, but here we are. Owen Sound, to Frankie's point, had like one of the worst second halves I think of any team in the league this year. That really showed against London. They didn't even look like they put up much of a fight aside from like a couple overtimes. Like, holy crap, man. I completely missed the mark. That was actually one of my worst predictions, I think, of the entire thing. And you know what? I'm going to wear it because Owen Sound, they disappointed me. I don't think it's more of a conversation of whether London is way better. I think it's just Owen Sound is not playing their best hockey and hasn't for a while, but like that carried into the playoffs. You know what? I think it's fine. Like matchups like that are going to happen. I just wish it went a little bit differently. But to everyone's point, like London just walked all over them pretty much.
Hey, if you ignore the 2 games where they got blown out by a combined 12-0, they were competitive.
I guess so.
Well, we thought Colby. I mean, even I thought Colby Barlow could maybe force them to game 5. I mean, 3 goals in 4 games, not too bad.
He didn't really do too much though. Like just in the general scope of things, he didn't really too much. But yeah.
Yeah, Owen Sound was just a team that never really convinced me. They made a lot of their big acquisitions before the season, and even then, like as much as I love Teddy Sawyer, and I don't think he even played in this series, to be fair, but they were in a good position at the start of the year, and then everyone else made moves, and Owen Sound decided not to. So they put themselves in that weird gray area where not only did they not compete this year, they didn't move anything to be able to load up in future years. So that, to me, I kind of look at this as a wasted year, unfortunately.
And which is a shame because Colby Barlow put up some historic numbers for that franchise.
For sure.
To not like go, not like all in, but like a little bit in. So you're like competitive is kind of strange to me. Like they didn't really do much.
Yeah.
Goaltending was a disaster all season. Aside from Carter George, who had a great like stint as a rookie. Holy moly, that goaltending tandem was just bad.
And when you're a team like Owen Sound too, like these teams don't get many players like Colby Barlow. So
you got to build off of when you get them. You got to build off.
Exactly. So to go neither competitive this year nor acquire assets to go after it next year doesn't sit completely well with me, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
Alrighty, guys, it's time. I wish, dating back to the last podcast, I wish one of Frankie or I just bit the bullet and predicted Kitchener to win this because we were on the fence. We almost
we needed to get someone on the other side just to make it a little more fun.
I came in I thought I was gonna do it, but then I kind of backtracked. I was like, okay, maybe I shouldn't. Maybe
Josh's confidence in how stupid it was to say that Kitchener had a chance really made me not say this was going to be a really difficult series for Windsor.
Yeah, this one I missed the mark on by a lot, and now I owe our graphic designer in Barry $10 because we had a little bet going. So yeah, my thoughts again, just like Owen Sound in London, I'm gonna say this was more Windsor playing terribly and Kitchener not like they. Don't get me wrong, Kitchener played well as a team. They put all the pieces together when it really mattered, but man, was Windsor just terrible, just unlike I've ever seen. Terrible.
Okay, guess what Matthew Maggio, Shane Wright, and Brett Harrison had in the combined in terms of combined points.
Combined points
for the 4 games.
I'm gonna go 4.
Okay.
They scored 7 points or 7 goals all series. Windsor. I'm gonna go 4 combined points.
That's what I just said.
Okay, they had a combined 9 points. 9 points though between the 3 of them.
Well, I mean,
that's better than I thought it would be.
The fun stat line is Anson Thornton has as many goals as Shane Wright in the first round of the playoffs. So there's that to think about. But honestly, Windsor played terribly. Like, how do you give up that many shorthanded goals in 4 games? I don't understand. Like, I know Kitchener's PK probably one of the better ones in the league based on what we just saw, but how do you do that? I don't even know how you do that as a team to give up that many shorthanded goals. 3. How? And how many breakaways did they give up? That was like probably in the double digits breakaways per game, like just across the series. It was like, I feel bad for the goalies. Actually, we just talked about this. I feel bad for Joey Constanzo because he came out of a terrible situation in Niagara only to get absolutely left out to dry in the first 2 games of the series. And obviously, you know, Matt Anishka, like, he came in and tried his best, but he didn't really do much better. His defense didn't really do much better either. But like, just go back and look at some of the goals. Like, this is fundamental hockey we're talking about. I don't know. Like,
we're gonna play another game. So who scored the most points for Kitchener? Who scored the most goals out of any player?
Points for Kitchener? Ooh, that's a tough one.
Which player led the team?
I know. Most goals is Carson Rakoff, I think.
Nope. There's one guy. This player had 4 goals in 4 games.
Is it Reed Vlad?
Yes,
Pinelli was up there for points.
Reed Vlad, man.
Pinelli was close, but he finished 1 shy of this player.
And then
in points or goals?
Points.
Okay.
So Reed Vlad had the most goals. I just guessed that. Points is different?
Yeah, points is different. This player had 6 points in 4 games. Vlad only had 1 assist.
Frankie just said Francesco Arcuri.
Nope, that's not him. Nope.
Man, I didn't know we were doing the O game in the middle of the show.
I give up. Tell me.
Mitchell Martin at
Holy
6
crap,
points.
That's wild. All right, Frankie, what are your thoughts on the whole?
Well, so there's 2 things I want to say. First of all, how did Windsor lose when Francesco Pinelli was suspended? And to extend on that suspension was garbage. Okay.
Okay, did that?
I feel like we have to because it's a garbage suspension.
No, it's not.
It's absolutely horrendous.
No, it's not.
You can't jump off the bench in front of a guy and expect not to get hit.
No, Frankie, like, I know people who have the same opinion as you, and I can see it. I understand why you feel that way. Francesco Pinelli knew exactly what he was doing, man.
I agree with Josh. I agree with Josh.
I get the logic about like a player jumping off the bench and like you not having time to react. But this man deliberately leaned his left shoulder into his face.
See, my counter to that is I think
playing
it was a brace.
hockey. How do you not have better reflexes than that? He knew it, and then he tried to pass it off like it was an accident. I saw the replay. He tried to pass it off like it was an accident, but he was having none of the people are believing that for their lives. I'm glad it came down, and I'm glad the Kitchener broadcaster, shout out Mike Farwell, who chirped Brandt Clark for some stupid reason, is like, oh man, what happens if he was wearing a Brandt Clark jersey? Oh, good Lord. Mike, a message to you.
Brandt Clark.
A knee injury is far less serious than a head injury, okay? Francesco Pinelli, yes, the Brandt Clark hit knee on knee probably should have been more than 1 game. I'm not going to touch on that right now. But Francesco Pinelli knew exactly what he was doing, and a direct headshot, 3 games. I'm not mad about that.
Look, if that is a 3-game suspension, was it in the... Oh, I can't remember what series it was. But there was one where there was just a straight headshot in the middle of the ice. I think it may have been Avery Hayes that got
hit in the series. There
was no penalty.
Yeah, there's also that, and like there's been a bunch of headshots against Brandt Clark in the series against Hamilton and no suspension. So
I'll get into that.
Like to Mike's point, like I saw, like I'm a big fan of Mike Farwell's work. By the way, he does a lot of coverage for the OHL. But to go after Brandt Clark and just chirp the guy for no reason, too, like completely out of pocket, like Clark. Come on, what are you doing? So you can be upset about the Pinelli suspension. I would be too if I was a Rangers fan, and I guess Frankie is, so I'd be upset. I mean, I guess you cheer for him because he's Luca's brother. I don't know.
No. But, I'd be saying about this about anyway. Like I
think Pinelli meant to do it. It looked like an accident, but if you just see it, no, it wasn't an accident.
If you want to suspend Pinelli for this one, fine. Okay. I can see a world where that is reasonable. 3 games to me is way too strong when we have other plays that are unquestionably worse. Like the Clark knee on knee to me, I think
was not worse than the Pinelli thing.
Okay,
come on.
Let's wait. We're not getting into that until we get to talk about the series. Let's chill.
We can also talk about the hit on Avery Hayes that was not even a penalty.
I haven't seen that video, so I need to see it. Do you have
We can also talk about
guys. We can talk about
slash
this. There's been
insane
reffing in most of these series. Like,
yeah,
some of the non-calls is just absurd.
Has been absolutely awful. But yeah, okay. So basically, I think we all like kind of see the narrative that Windsor actually played terribly in that series, and that's kind of the story of the West. Almost is like not necessarily one team like outright dominating, maybe just the other team playing not up to their level. And I think that goes for at least 3 of those series in the West.
Also, I have to mention with Windsor, they are now in big trouble because they went all in with Wright, of course, and Jacob Holmes and
Brett
Harrison. They gave up a lot of draft picks. So to not get a single playoff win out of it,
yikes, a good chunk of those guys aren't coming back. They're not coming back, a good chunk of them.
And neither is Maggio, and he was a lot of their team this year.
The only saving grace I'd argue is that they actually have a good crop of rookies. Like Greentree, Cristoforo was really good. Like, I think they're going to be okay, but I think they're going to drop off drastically next year.
They're really going to have to sell next year if they want to recoup some of the assets, which they're going to have to do because otherwise they're in the rebuild for the long haul here.
Okay, this last Jordan. Thought. Do you think Shane Wright regrets if he had the input that, had his good say to be like, okay, let's go to Windsor? Do you wish he went somewhere else? Do you think he's thinking?
Well, I mean,
that's a difficult one to say.
That's a difficult one to say, but like, I don't know. I think I know he's like relishing his time in the OHL, but I'm pretty sure he's like looking forward to leaving. Like, I don't think he wanted to come back. Period.
Actually, this was my last point too on that. Like, I think that a lot of people are using this as a chance to dunk on Shane Wright, which I think is wrong.
Why is it wrong?
He's not the reason they lost the series.
He was one of the reasons they lost.
He wasn't.
Sure. He wasn't the main reason, but he was one of them.
Like,
come on,
there's been a lot of
how many points in?
But he's not the. I don't know. The
he's
fact
not
that
the main reason.
He's not the main reason.
Matthew Maggio also shares some of the blame, but Shane Wright is Shane Wright, and he
think about the coaching guys. We're talking about Mark Savard, who's also relatively a new coach, and I don't think we should be.
This is not about coaching. I don't think, although I've heard some questionable things about Mark Savard and his coaching, but Shane Wright is supposed to be at that same level as Brant Clark and all those guys.
Well, he wasn't the regular season.
Well, he wasn't in the regular season, but what happened?
Podcast.
What's that?
Can we get a Brant Clark counter? Every time Josh mentions Brant Clark.
At least,
I don't care. Put it up in the corner. I don't give it. I don't care. I will say the
soundbite.
I'm taking that to my grave. Like, he's supposed to be on that same level, and he just wasn't. So
yeah, sure.
Say what you will. I don't think he deserves to be dunked on. Like, he's like the main reason. I definitely agree with you, Frankie. There, he is not the main reason, but like, he does deserve some his fair share of criticism because he didn't perform the way he was supposed to. And
for sure,
that's outside
I think they
of
all
the
agree with that. I don't
Shane
think
Wright is like
disagrees.
Supposed to be like the guy that can take control of the game and can score those big goals and can pull your team, like put his team on his back type of thing and go. He did none of that, and it was just really unfortunate. Like, honestly, because like, obviously you'd like to see Shane Wright later in the playoffs.
All I have to say about that, Josh, is I think that assessment of Shane Wright is off base to begin with. Not from you, but from people saying, because to me, Shane Wright is not the purebred goal scorer. He is the guy that his job is to set up Matt Maggio and the other big snipers on the team. To me,
what are you talking about?
Yeah, this is something I've said this about Wright for a long time. He's not.
And you're just wrong.
Hot take: Shane Wright and David Goyette are going far in the AHL playoffs this year. They're gonna watch them win like the Calder Cup.
No, Wright to me is just he's not.
So you're telling me
goal scorer.
Seattle drafted him a 4th overall playmaker.
There's nothing wrong with a playmaker.
No, not at 4th overall. Are you joking?
Why not?
That's like saying Mitch Marner. Oh, why would you draft Mitch Marner 4th overall? He can't score.
No. Mitch is not a sole playmaker though. That's
nobody. Obviously,
no. I'm not saying that
Wright
can't score.
Shane Wright's main responsibility is to not set up Matt Maggio. Man, it's supposed to work both ways. Come on.
Yes.
One was drafted 4th overall and one wasn't. Let's be real here, Frankie. Oh my!
One just scored 50 goals this year though.
That is a lunacy take. That Shane Wright was supposed to be setting up Matt Maggio. Yes, because Mark Savard and the whole ownership group down there is like, yes, let's bring in Shane Wright so he can set up what we already have. No.
Look, I'll say this. Everybody in Windsor should be embarrassed. They should feel ashamed.
And yes, before we get to the break and talk about the Eastern Conference, I will say someone needs to take away the Twitter login for Windsor, because after they lost, it was just the longest string of embarrassing tweets I've ever seen.
At least they weren't the Niagara Ice Dogs.
Yes. I guess did we talk about that last week? We didn't, because the series hasn't started. Can we talk about that actually?
Yes, when we shift over to the Eastern Conference, we definitely can. Yes, like Windsor needs to be locked out of Twitter. They said there's no real 8 seed. That's a lie. There's always like Kitchener was an 8 seed. Like I don't care. Like if you say like, oh, they're too good to be an 8 seed or whatever, and then they're like, they blamed it on injuries in the regular season. I was like, come on, man. Don't say this. Don't embarrass your fan base.
I'm not on Twitter anymore. What was this? Was this like just them
after the game ended?
Out of context, or?
After the game ended, Windsor's admin on Twitter is like, "Oh, we had the most man games lost in the regular season, but we still finished first in the West."
Oh boy!
And I'm like, "Come on!" And then after
these weren't quotes from
this was just a straight up tweet. And then the next tweet was, there's truly no 8 seed. Kitchener loaded up and it paid off for them. And everyone in the replies is like,
and it paid off.
What did you do? And then the image accompanying that was a screenshot of a TV with the players shaking hands. That might have been the most embarrassing thing I've ever seen in this series. But yeah,
they posted some.
They posted
stuff.
that. Yeah. So, anyways, Jordan, we're gonna hit the break and then Eastern Conference time.
Yep, tune back in as we get set back for some Eastern Conference playoffs involving all of our teams.
Please.
Alrighty, guys. We are here to talk about the Eastern Conference. Up to you where we want to start. We can touch base and do the opposite like we did in the West, maybe discuss.
So we're going very last.
Well, you know what? We teased making fun of Niagara. And that's one of my favorite things to do on this show.
So I guess we need to talk about Ottawa.
Okay, we'll talk about Ottawa.
So I feel like we need to talk about Ottawa.
Let's go.
Contextualize.
Yeah. I also have stuff to say about this, and it's going to involve Twitter references. So, just stay tuned for that.
So let's set the scene, okay? Game 1, 67's Generals. Ottawa wins this game 7-0. And I believe I sent you guys a picture in the group chat, looking at the shots on goal, and I think Ottawa outshot
56-16.
20. Yeah, and after the first
also
period,
20
it was 20 to nothing.
20 to nothing
after the first period. Yeah.
And it was at that point. Do either of you have the actual tweet exactly what they said anymore? Or
no, I can give you context. I think. Yeah. So basically, Niagara. Granted, Niagara, who's one of the most joke franchises in the entire Ontario Hockey League, just without context, I think either tweeted or replied to one of the intermission graphics, and it's like, better luck next year to Oshawa. Oshawa finished 8th, obviously, and is playing a juggernaut in the 67s. So Oshawa, who their entire social media brand, owned by Brandon Wright, shout out, just clapped back and is basically said, at least we're not in the basement of the league, or at least we made the playoffs, which, albeit, if you're Niagara, you have no place chirping any team, because you just need to keep your mouth closed, and that's it. Because
did Brandon not tell them, at least you guys can't even lose, right? You lost the lottery.
Yes, that was
you lost the lottery. You couldn't get the Memorial Cup. You can't. You finish in the bottom of the league.
So Niagara's pretty much a joke. They lost the lottery, finishing by far as the worst team, and they're not even picking first overall. So who even cares? So then, so obviously, that starts a bit of a stuff. I think Barry actually got involved too, just to throw a jab in Niagara. But my gripe with all this is not even with the Ice Dogs tweeting, and it's not with Brandon Wright responding through the Generals account. Brandon Wright is the social media guy for Oshawa.
Very nice
it's
guy.
The fact that Steve Clark, the broadcaster for the Ice Dogs, then goes on some, not tangent, but goes on some tweets out himself, and he's like, "Oh, I don't think the beef between Niagara and Oshawa and Barrie did anything to value their franchises or increase the value of their franchises." Shut up. What are you doing? Niagara just embarrassed themselves on social media. Now you're just embarrassing yourself by getting involved. And Brandon actually clapped back at him with his personal account, saying that is what Oshawa's brand is based off of, which it could not be more correct, because Brandon has built that into the thing where they just make fun of people, which I don't even know if I agree with that, but it doesn't matter, because I'm glad he just owns it. And if that's your brand, just run with it. So like Steve Clark and the Ice Dogs, shut up, man. Like, oh my God, you're just embarrassing yourself. And I like Steve Clark. I like his calls on the broadcast, but like when when the Ice Dogs admin just gets into these random turf wars about who knows what, it doesn't make any sense. Like, what are you doing?
Well, this is the thing, right? When it comes to the OHL, especially when you talk about commentators and stuff, there's obviously a bit of a bias, as there should be.
Bias is fine.
We all know
we've been there.
It's actually better because you're getting better calls. You're getting a better
because every
environment,
team, obviously, their like local broadcasters are going to be biased towards some more than others, obviously, but they're going to be biased. But to Frankie's point, if you're Niagara, why are you starting pointless beef? Like your franchise, people laugh at you even off Twitter. Like, why are you even getting involved? Why are you chirping a playoff team too? Like, yeah, Oshawa got destroyed in a couple of games against Ottawa, but like, everyone kind of saw that coming, and no one really like was making fun of Oshawa for it because like Ottawa's just a really good team. I don't know why you have to go out of your way to say, like, you know, at least like get a shot on goal or whatever it was said, and then Steve Clark just chiming in afterwards and being like, "Oh, I don't think that does anything to increase the value of anyone's franchise." What? Like, why? Why say that?
Yeah, you know what else doesn't increase the value of your franchise? Finishing a regular season with what? What do they have? 28 points?
Probably.
But like for like, I feel bad because we make fun of Niagara a lot.
Oh, I don't feel bad for this. Like this part, they deserve.
I feel bad for the fans.
Yeah, but then
the fans.
But then I think
Niagara.
to myself, stop giving us a reason to make fun of you. Like it's stupid. Like
if you're in a rebuild,
to
just embrace you're in a rebuild and like just wait it out. And then, like, when you're back on top, then start as much beef as you want, and people think you're idiots anyway. But like, that's what I mean. Don't talk.
Look, Niagara already has enough PR issues. They already have enough PR issues from the last year.
Yeah,
stay quiet.
We're not even gonna get into that. We did a whole.
We're not getting into that.
But we're not gonna get into that. But like, just embrace the rebuild. Enjoy playoff hockey. Watching teams that actually were good, and like, tell your broadcasters to stop tweeting because it's just a really bad look on your team. It's a bad look. It's a terrible look.
Okay, let's talk Ottawa. Let's get into the series. Frankie, tee it up. You know, what was you're obviously going to have the most insight into how this all went down.
Yeah, look, Ottawa was really good game one. They came out ready to go. Game two, I didn't think they were very good, to be honest with you. They kind of won that game based on just having more talent than Oshawa, which, again, you know, I think that's fine. Like, that's what the first round of the OHL playoffs usually is. I do want to focus in on game three a little bit because I thought Ottawa was really good in that game for the most part, right? They tied the game in the first period. They played a very good first period, I think, after probably about the first 10 minutes of it. And then they got up 3-1. And then Oshawa started to come back. But the goal that I really want to focus on is the goal that made it 3-3. When they went to video review, so I don't know if you guys saw this, but basically what happened is was scramble in the crease, net comes off, referee blows the whistle, puck is shot, blocked, and then shot back into the net. It's called no goal on the ice, which it should be. They go to review and end up calling it a goal. This can't happen. This simply cannot happen when we have video review. A continuous motion does not mean a puck is shot after the whistle goes. Continuous motion means puck is shot, whistle goes when it shouldn't have, puck was going in the net anyway. That's a goal. That is continuous motion. We cannot have reviews that go giving a team a goal when the rule is simply black and white, right? Thankfully, in this series, didn't really have much of a difference effect to anything, thankfully. But if this happens in, you know, like we always bring up the worst case scenario, Game 7, OHL Finals, overtime, this happens, there's no way they called a goal.
Look, you don't want to see this is the playoffs. You don't want to be seeing this happening ever, ideally.
No, exactly. And this was so egregious, and it's video review. Like we should not be getting video reviews wrong. If you do not know the answer, you stick with what is on the ice. You have to follow the rule book on a video review. And you know, again, this is one that I wouldn't just be saying if it was for Ottawa.
Well, I mean, there were some questionable like video review calls like in every series,
absolutely,
pretty much.
Absolutely.
So it's like a widespread issue, more so than like just like I know that's not what you were intending, obviously, but it is a widespread issue. Like teams do deal with this, some more than others, obviously, but it happens. And I think everyone's kind of under a microscope. I think more people are tuning in to OHL playoff action now, especially because of all the hype. I know like it's been one of the most talked about things on Twitter, like even with like big media people sometimes like just chiming in about it. You know what? I think you're right, Frankie. I think that is a good takeaway from that, especially because it wasn't really much contest series wise. And yeah, I think that's definitely an important note to take away from that.
One of the things too, like the three of us know that each team supplies their own video review. The standard building to building, like again, all three of us have been to different buildings. We know the standard is not the same in each building. It just simply isn't. So the fact that we're in the playoffs and we don't have rotating video review crews, that to me is a glaring mistake on the OHL's behalf.
I think a lot of mistakes have kind of been exposed. Like a lot of mistakes have been exposed, especially during this playoff run. And again, forgive me for bringing up Kitcher's broadcasters, but they like actually tweet out this stuff. And I'm like, I don't know. I know they work for like the team, but I feel like that crosses some sort of line or boundary. Like, I don't think I would ever tweet out something like that because it's just like a weird look on the Colts. I'm not saying what they're doing is wrong. I'm just saying like I don't know if I'd ever be comfortable like actually tweeting out the league sucks pretty much. But like even the note about suspensions where they don't like publicly tweet out or broadcast like how long or what the reasoning is or whatever. I saw that was a hot issue like over the course of the first round, especially with all the suspensions. So like to Frankie's point, I think this is just part of like stuff that I think the league will have to take a look at and hopefully improve on like moving forward. I mean, not much we can do about it now, but like
for sure,
it's important to acknowledge, I think, for sure.
For me, there's a big difference too. Like officiating on the ice, that's a very difficult job, right? You get one look at it, and whether it's a check from behind or a boarding or a clean hit, that is a bang bang thing, right? That we can all acknowledge is very difficult to get right. And that's why we have the procedure where we cut officials in the postseason. Linesmen get cut, referees get cut, all that, right? Video review, I have a very different stance on because you can look at it so many times. So to be getting video reviews wrong at this level in the postseason to me is it's not good enough. I demand more personally.
But generally, Luca Pinelli, 12 points in 5 games, 5 goals. Dominant performance, and Logan Morrisson, who we mentioned early in the show as well. Dominant performance. Do you see these guys continuing to light it up as the playoffs progress?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, those guys obviously put up the big numbers. I think Will Gerrois had a phenomenal series. He's been like Dave Cameron called him the generator because that's what he is, right? He's just this little engine that generates so much momentum and excitement and buzz on the bench. And, he, I think, deserves a ton of recognition for this series. Same with, I think Pavel Mintyukov had his best game as a 67 in game 5.
That's what you want to see.
Exactly. So, I think a big piece of this too, that we're not even thinking about in most cities right now is Cam Tolnay, key on the power play, on the penalty kill, down the middle of the ice in faceoffs. He was hurt all series. He didn't see a game. And then center number 4 for that fourth line, Chris Barlas, who's just a little spark plug down there in the bottom of the lineup that can go out and, lay the body and get a little bit of energy going. Those guys weren't playing. And I think right now it's looking like they'll both be back against Peterborough. So getting healthy too, I think that's, 67s haven't been healthy all year. So getting those two guys back will be big.
Well, there you have it, guys. 67s in a minute, brought to you by Frankie Benvenuti.
In a minute. I mean,
that was like 10 minutes.
The video review. Yeah.
Were you down in the locker room, Frankie, when they won or advanced?
Yeah. Yeah. They it's very business-like, I'd say, with this group right now. They're obviously they have a lot of fun. They've done that all year, and it's hard not to when you're winning. And especially at this age group where, they are a little bit less business-like than you'd expect from an NHL team just because they are kids. But they're locked in. I think they really were fighting it a little bit in the first period. And then, I think with them, it's a mindset. They're almost – they're really hard to beat when they're in the right headspace, I think.
All right, Jordan. Let's move it along here. I don't know if I'm going to go that in depth with Barry, but we'll see. We'll see.
Let's cover Peterborough, Sudbury now, just before we get into our teams.
Just write this.
We don't need like more than 4 seconds for this one.
I believe I was the only one correct about. I was the only one correct about this too. By the way, I swear that both of you guys picked Sudbury.
Oh, I picked Sudbury in 7 or something like that. Yeah.
Peterborough, man, they come out and came to play. Now, these were close games generally. Like, they're talking about game 1, 4-2 Peterborough. Game 2, 2-1 Peterborough. Game 3, 5-3 Peterborough. Game 4, 4-2 Peterborough. Like, Sudbury put up a fight, but they just kept coming up on the losing end.
How the hell did Sudbury finish in 5th?
Well, before that, Frankie, like this was actually one of the rare occasions where I don't think a team was dominated, but they ended up getting swept, which gives off the impression that they were dominated. But I don't think Sudbury was dominated. I think as the 5th seed, they were fine. I think maybe Hamilton should have been a better fit for the 5th seed, but that's just me. You know what? I think it boils down to just common mistakes that can't happen in the playoffs. You talk about that empty net goal scored by Quentin Musty on his own net, which was just brutal. And then, just like defensive lapses that end up costing your team. And that's all I have to say about that. I'm disappointed that Sudbury didn't like kind of put up more of a fight. I thought Peterborough was one of those more vulnerable teams, if you will, that could have been taken advantage of and with the right team against them. And I think Hamilton would definitely have taken advantage of them. I don't think we would have seen like a 10-2 or 6-3 game, but you know what? That's a tough lesson learned by the Wolves. And I think they're going to come back stronger for it.
And for the Petes, they generally played like a good team game. They didn't necessarily have anybody stand up, but I thought all of their forward lines and deep.
I'm intrigued to see how they match up against Ottawa, because Ottawa definitely has the star power to go head to head with Peterborough. And I think that's a really intriguing second round matchup. Like it could go, like Peterborough could get dominated. I'm just going to put that out there. They could.
Well, we'll see. Yeah, we'll get into the predictions afterwards and we'll see what everybody has to say about that. I think that's all we really have to say. Let's just move on now. We'll talk about Mississauga and North Bay. And like I said, man, we all said like North Bay in 5. I think that's what we all kind of came into agreement to.
North Bay in 4. I didn't think it'd be.
Oh yeah, you said North Bay in 4.
I said North Bay
that's what Frankie said. You remember what Frankie said? He's like, this is the most lopsided series of the playoffs.
Boy, does that look stupid right now.
I think on paper it still was.
It still was, but like, come on. Like, I'm just gonna go out and say it. If the Steelheads kept Del Mastro and Del Belbaluz, they would have beaten North Bay and played like the way they did. They would have beaten them.
Well, also, if North Bay didn't have DiVincentis, they would have probably lost the series too.
Oh, for sure. I think I can speak on this a little bit just because I was at 2 of those games in Mississauga. Boy, does North Bay look rough. Like, oh man. Like, yes, they have definitely like crazy offensive star power, like scorers that can score in bunches, like goals on goals on goals. Not to mention they also have a lineup loaded with NHL prospects. That's another thing to consider. But I don't know, that team just doesn't really do it for me. Like they as much as they can score in bunches, they also give up a lot of goals in bunches. And we saw that when in the games that Mississauga won, they were just scoring basically like any other team, and it looked like North Bay was just like a middle of the road team. This was the 2nd seed out of the East. So you're right, Frankie. Dom DiVincentis, I've said this before. He is the best goalie I've ever seen live. Like, play live, he is the best goalie I've ever seen. Like, shout out, he's fantastic goalie. So, like, I think without him, North Bay's losing that series.
He's the best player of the series.
I think for him, like, I think moving forward, and we're going to touch on this in the Barry thing, but he is the key to their success, a big key to their success. And as much as they need to score, they need to keep pucks out of their own net. And if you're giving up that many goals to a young Steelheads team that albeit is okay, but really all things considered not that good, that's a bit of a concern for me in the first round, at least.
Yeah, I'll dive into it. I mean, North Bay really had huge special teams issues, throughout the first part of this series.
Yeah, Jordan, you said like 7% on the power play?
Through the first 4 games, they were shooting 7.7%. Now it has gone up since then. They really were able to find twine in games 5 and 6, but I mentioned this in my takeaways article, especially going into the second round. They can't have a type of performance like that again now against higher elevated teams, because there ain't going to be a game 6 if they're doing that on special teams. Now you look at 5v5. Honestly, let's talk about the Steelheads a bit. This is definitely a youth movement. You saw Luke Misa ended up getting dropped, Lucas Carmiris in game 6 up to the first line. You're probably going to see, maybe that's a sign for next season. Who knows how that's going to turn out? And
dude, stop it with this Luke Misa stuff.
James Hardie did everything he could to try to continue his OHL career, and wish my farewells to James Hardie, Charlie Callahan, man. I don't know if you guys got a chance to look at the OHL coaches poll results that came out a couple days ago, but I mean, when you talk about most hard workers and everything, Callahan was an 8th round pick. Nobody really thought he would get to where he ended up being. It was just through hard work and determination. And who knows? This is a guy that could end up signing like an ECHL
he's got a future,
deal too,
for sure. Even if it's in youth sports or like somewhere pro, he's definitely got a future. But like, shout out to him and Casper Larson. Like Larson being an import, like that's big. Like to even like come over here and like have that long of a career in a league like this and play like as much as they did. Like that's great. I want to shout out Porter Martone and Angus McDonnell too. They were fantastic in the series, and they're young kids too. Like they're like 16, 17. That is like mind-boggling to think about. But anyways, Frankie, what are your thoughts? I don't know if you caught any of the games, but you know.
I was there. We literally got up.
Guys, we were all there.
Oh,
that's right. Yikes. Scratch that. What did you think of that series?
You know, I found it weird how quickly, because North Bay went into the playoffs 11 straight wins, and they had that stretch of 5 games where they gave up 1 goal, and it didn't carry over. Like, I found that a little bit weird. The other thing with them, I found they rely a lot on Ty Nelson to get their offense going, and I think in the playoffs it's very, very hard for your defenseman to be leading your scoring charge. You know, I think the only exception to that rule right now is Brant Clark, and I don't want to hear a word from you because Brant Clark is one of the best players in the league. So he's just on a different skill level. Him every day. But even with a guy like Pavel Mintyukov, who had a really good game, it wasn't for his offensive production. And I think, you know, either Nelson really has to find a way to just be ridiculous, which I'm not sure is a fair ask of him because the defensive zone is so critical in the playoffs, or they have to have somebody else offensively step up. And I think that's probably the more likely way it's going to happen for North Bay. But man, they're really getting thrown to the wolves with this series coming up with Barrie. They will not have time to figure this out. And I know like North Bay is a very difficult place to play, yes, but if they don't figure it out in a hurry, they're going to be with their back up against the wall very quickly in that series.
I also want to give credit to Ryerson Leanders, the 16-year-old netminder.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
yes,
there are a lot of people that thought, you know, why isn't Alessio Baglieri starting? You know, he's the older guy, but they elected for the youth movement in Mississauga.
He was
and honestly, he was pretty good, all things considered.
16 years old, and he started every single playoff game. That was impressive. So shout out to him. He's going to have a good career now because he's going to be the starter come years to come for Mississauga. But Frankie, I really like that insight that you had. I do think North Bay in the games that I watched, and this isn't me just because I'm like Barrie and whatever, but like I do think they rely a little too much on their top guys. And I think beyond that, their depth, especially on the back end, is very questionable because that's a lot of that. Like that was kind of like the main source of how Mississauga got all their rallies going offensively, at least, is just like taking advantage when someone like Ty Nelson isn't on the ice. And I think that's a big concern if you're North Bay going forward, because you're going to run into teams that are much deeper. You have Barrie, who's up next, that has 3 OAs that are experienced scorers at the OHL level, and then a deeper team to deal with. Like, I just think that's a really interesting point. And you're right. They don't have a lot of time to figure it out. They have some days to rest, but they don't have a lot of time to figure it out. They have less than a week. And you're right. And the same can be said for Barrie, and we're going to talk about this next. But if you can't find A, depth scoring, and B, deeper defense that deals with their top guys on, you know, more often occasions, you're going to be in trouble in a playoff series for sure.
I just want to add to this too. In Game 4, we talk about missed calls. It was shocking that Matvei Petrov, that cross check to the head, ended up garnering no call afterwards. Like we thought, oh wait, there's a 10-minute misconduct coming? It ended up there was no penalty assessed.
Like Frankie said, officiating has been questionable at best.
Again, I'll give the pass on the ice, but I don't like that call when somebody calls it and then somebody comes up and says whatever else, right? I didn't like the Tapper and Reed crew. I don't know who else really digs into officiating, but I do not like that combo.
Alrighty, guys. Here we go. Hamilton and Barrie. I've watched a lot of this because I'm doing a Brant Clark article. I think we've all Josh is obviously shooting all of these games. Take us through it, Mr. Kim, because obviously this was a pretty crazy series.
Man, so first of all, I want to say this is like one of my only first round predictions that actually hit. I called Barrie in 6, and it actually ended up happening magically. I don't know how. But this series, like, I say this was the most entertaining series of the first round. I think I'm actually safe in saying that because this series had everything. It had close games, it had blowouts, it had a Michigan goal, it had a goalie goal.
Storylines.
The storylines coming out of this were absolutely bonkers. So, I mean, what can I say? Barrie is the better team, and they played like it. Full credit to us. Like, obviously, the games 3 and 4 in Hamilton where we lost, we were not playing. Like, that was not us. Hamilton was good, but they weren't a level where we should have lost. We were playing terribly.
We didn't have Brent Clark.
Well, we didn't have him for one of those games. Actually, 1.5.
Is there any other player on your team, Josh? I only ever hear you mention Clark.
Oh, no, I love
Bo Akey. You need to talk about Bo Akey.
Okay.
Bo Jelsma, most underrated. Yeah, shake it off, whatever.
He was, yeah.
So, I'm going to say this is kind of like what, like the series in a postseason that kind of make or break your team, because you either flounder like we did last year against a very beatable Mississauga team, or you rise to the occasion and come back from a 3-0 deficit in a series clinching game, which actually ended up happening. So, to sum up, and I'm not going to dive into this part too deeply, I was really impressed because a lot of, like, some teams could easily just fall on their face and just call it a day and go into game 7 or go into game 6 in overtime or whatever, and anything can happen. But like, they really dug deep, and at the end of the day, to go off 2 games at home where you dominate, lose back-to-back on the road, and then come back and win in game 5 at home, and then finally close down game 6. That's pretty hard to do because that's a mix of emotions. You're going from high to low, back to high. So full credit to the guys. They did great. Game 6, I want to talk about. That was one of the wildest hockey game I've ever seen in my life. Hamilton gets up 3-0 midway through the second. Then Barrie answers with 3 straight goals in like a 6-minute span to close out the period. So you're tied 3-3. Then Barrie scores with like 6 minutes left in the third to take the lead. You're riding high. The bench is going crazy. Nick Lardis, who I love and we should actually have on this podcast sometime, like, he's actually gross, ties the game, does a crazy sally, so it's 4-4, and then with 10 seconds left, you score somehow off the rush. Like, my goodness, it was just a wild game, and really, like, that's what propels you forward in the playoffs, if I'm making that argument, because those types of wins are so monumental in the postseason. It's just crazy. So to go off from that and enter a different series, that's just huge. And I was just really happy that it ended in 6 because that's ultimately where it should go. Hamilton's a good team, a young team like Mississauga. They're really good. Nick Lardis was great. And at the end of the day, like, you know what? Our big guys did show up. Like, Ethan Cardwell had a hat trick in game 6. Brent Clark led everybody in the series in points. Bo Jelsma came back from injury and had an immediate impact. Anson Thornton was great. Like, all that stuff, everything you need to go well in a first round playoff series went well, at least in the last 2, game 5 and game 6. So I really have nothing more to say. The last thing I will add, Sahil Panwar is one of the dirtiest players I've ever seen in my life. So not only does he take out Bo Jelsma in game 1, but then he takes a massive run at Brent Clark, hits him directly from behind into the boards as the buzzer expires, and then has the audacity to try and chirp Barrie's bench as he's getting like escorted off the ice. Joke of a player. I wish it wasn't this way because I really like junior hockey players. He's a joke, and he's leaving because he's an OA, so he can't even get suspended for next year. But he is an absolute joke.
It's a difficult one. I don't want to call Sahil Panwar a joke because, yes, you have to keep the emotions in check, but I think it's also not to give him an excuse because it's not excusable. But we're talking about an OA who just watched his junior hockey career get ended, right?
That's ridiculous, Frankie. Like,
no,
I know,
Josh. I'm not giving him an excuse. I'm just saying that it is a very, very
throw a water bottle, man. Like, you don't go out and run. Like,
everybody's going after.
Player.
Everybody was targeting Brent Clark on Hamilton.
Well, okay, everyone was targeting Brent Clark, maybe like for good reason because he's our best player. Like, obviously, you're going to try and make his life as hard as possible. But like, I feel like there's a line between going after someone and making their life hard versus being a dirty player. Him,
yes.
Florian Jacklin, who's like punching people in the face behind the play. Like,
he was crazy. He's crazier than his brother.
Doing?
People don't realize he's crazy. He's crazier than Arbor. He's crazier than Arbor Jacklin.
Like, personally, Frankie, like, that's fine. You can be frustrated. You can be mad that the other team's like winning, but to go out and cross that line of safety for your fellow player, like where's the mutual respect there? Where's the mutual respect to say, Brandt Clarke, you're better than me. I'm going to make your life difficult, but I'm not going to cross that line of being a dirty player. Where is that line of respect? You cannot just go out there and swing your stick around and punch people in the face. It's not allowed.
I absolutely agree with you, Josh. I'm just saying that, again, not to give him an excuse, but it is in that situation, particularly in that instance where, with 9 seconds to go, your season is all of a sudden done and that's it. It is just very emotional, and it's
what, Frankie, I understand that, but like I've been in that role. I think we all have been. Anyone who's played sports has been in that role, have suffered heartbreaking losses in whatever capacity. But like your first instinct should not be to get off on the very next shift with 10 seconds left in the game. Yeah, you're going for the game time goal, but when you see someone in the corner with their back turned, you are not hitting them from behind. That is just a standard hockey play, hockey rule, whatever. So Brandt Clarke did come out of that series with actually some, like, it looked pretty bad, like the injuries, but like I'm sure he's going to be fine. But it's just like, it's stuff like that that doesn't really belong in hockey. And I'd be just as pissed if one of the Barrie guys did that to Hamilton if they beat us. So
do we want to touch on the Clarke suspension on Lawson Schick?
I mean, sure, we might as well. So and that, like, I'm not even sure where I sit on that, but like back in like game 3, Brandt Clarke, I'll admit, was really stupid. Like, just it wasn't really like a great play because like Lawson Schick was carrying the puck out of his own zone. It was literally dead center ice pretty much, and Brandt Clarke just pretty much obliterated him for like it. I think he was trying to hit him, but like again, it was one of those issues where Schick like dodged out of the way at the last second, and it was knee on knee. I think it looked worse than it actually was, and on replay you can kind of see Brandt Clarke like falling because he was a little off balance after trying to adjust because Schick dodged him. But like, I've never seen someone on OHL Twitter get called out more than Brandt Clarke. And some of it is warranted, sure. Some of it is fine. But like to go at him and be like, oh, that's a garbage hit, like whatever. Like, come on. There are so many worse hits that someone can do. And honestly, Brandt Clarke, I don't think was trying to hurt him. It would be really stupid if he was trying to hurt him. But like to see like the OHL media become so one-sided against this guy, so weird to me.
I was actually okay with the 1 game suspension because, correct me if I'm wrong, but this happened in like the first handful of shifts in the game as well.
No, I think it was actually the second period. It was the second period, but the thing is the I think the defining factor here is Lawson Schick almost only missed 1 shift, whereas you look at a hit from behind directly to the head of Bo Jelsman from Panwar in game 1, and Jelsman's out until game 5. So like that, I think has an impact and I think that should have an impact depending obviously on the hit itself.
It's a slippery slope.
It's a slippery slope. Not our call. We're definitely not educated enough to make those calls. But like what I do know is like I don't know why Brandt Clarke is getting called out this much by like a bunch of people. Opposing players, sure, but it's just weird to see so many broadcasters be like, "Oh, he's the golden boy of the OHL. They're not going to punish him." Like, maybe look at a knee versus a head injury, and there's your answer. Like, it's not who did it. I think if the roles were reversed, Pinelli would not be getting a 3-game suspension for hitting someone's knee and then them missing 1 shift. Like, come on, let's be real here. He knocked Oliver Pierre out for the playoffs.
I disagree with it using the result as
that's fair.
The penalty, because I mean, like it happened with Tyler Boucher this year.
Ottawa's been like, and that was like Barrie last year because remember Ethan Cardwell accidentally broke someone's leg and he was suspended for like 15 games or whatever. I don't know if I'm in agreement. I don't know if I'm on board with the whole like go by result thing. You obviously have to look at. I think body part matters. I think knee versus head is completely different conversation. But to Frankie's point, Ottawa has been victimized by some brutal suspension calls. So
everybody has. Everybody has.
Yeah,
I don't want to make it sound like it's just my team is the one that always gets screwed over by the suspensions. It's literally it happens to everybody. I just think it's inconsistency on the league's part in that regard. So that's kind of why it aggravates me so much. And again, with the Clarke one, I thought 1 game was okay based on how much time he missed in the original game. My gripe for bringing it up earlier was I just didn't think Pinelli's was a 3-game.
And that's fair. I think the conversation can definitely be had. I think it was fine with 3. I would have been also fine with 2, but that's just me.
Yeah. Oh, I do want to. I want to put this on just Hamilton. I thought just quickly. I thought they were a really resilient group for a team that shouldn't have finished higher than 7th or 8th based on the guys they traded away. I think They did a lot of smart things at the deadline. They got a lot of players who are really ready to compete, including
you called them the smartest team.
I did call them the
even
smartest team, but I didn't.
Their scratches are going to make an impact. Like Luca Testa and Ben Bujold are still really young players, and although they didn't see playoff action, like they're going to be right there with Nick Lardis next year. So I think that's great.
The Petes are going to regret trading Nick Lardis. This is my takeaway.
They already probably regret it based on the stats that he's put up, and even in the playoffs, he's been great. So
hey, if they win in the playoffs, who knows? Maybe they won't, but we'll see.
All right. Are we going to hit another commercial break for our sponsor, and then we're going to do predictions for next round, or do you want to do that now?
Up to you. I think we could do it quickly. I don't know if we need to.
All right. There's only four, so let's go.
Alrighty, guys. Let's get into it. Second round
Leave your
predictions.
Justification for 2 sentences or something, or one.
This is going to be quick. I don't think we need to go too insane into each series. Let's just kind of talk. Let's just talk about each playoff series. Let's start off in the West. So let's start with London and Kitchener. What are we all predicting how this one plays out?
Kitchener's in 6. I think the magical run continues, and I said this before because I said if London and Kitchener matched up in the first round, my money would be on Kitchener. They did it last year. Why not?
London in 7.
I'm going London in 6.
Interesting. I'm going to
So
be.
Josh went all out on the Kitchener Rangers too. They will be in the Western Conference.
No. I'm just going back to my original take when I thought.
We don't have time, Josh. We don't have time.
Let's just keep moving. Sarnia versus the Saginaw Spirit. That's going to be a great series to watch.
That's going to be a good one.
Will Ty Voigt and the likes of Nolan Burke, Luca Del Balbaluzzi, Hindel Mastro destroy the hopes of young Michael Misa and St. Peric? Or will the guys that have been really leading them in this playoffs help them push further?
I'm taking Sarnia in 6.
I don't believe in either of them making the finals.
I agree with Frankie, but I'm taking
Spoiler
Sarnia.
Alert. But I'm going Sarnia in 5.
I'm going to go Sarnia in 5 as well. It's tough to imagine Saginaw winning this, but who knows? Maybe that's the crazy second round series, and maybe they're the magical team. Let's head into the East now. Ottawa versus Peterborough. How do we see this?
This is a tough one.
This is crazy.
This is a tough one.
Now, Peterborough swept their series, so I guess they have 1 day extra rest, I would think.
It's, I think, 2 days, but also I think Peterborough is going to be off about 10 days by the time they get to Ottawa, so that's a lot of days off. I'd be thrown into the arena if I picked anybody other than Ottawa, so I'm picking Ottawa.
He's going to pick Ottawa.
Even if I didn't work for Ottawa, I think I'd pick them in the series regardless. But
face value, you're going to pick Ottawa.
I'm between 5 and 6.
I don't think all series are going to 6 games. So if this was going to be my 5,
I'm going 5.
I'm agreeing with Frankie. I'm going Ottawa in 5.
Ottawa
because
in 6.
This is like the Sarnia Guelph series. I think Peterborough's good, but everything they have, Ottawa's just better. So I'm going Ottawa in 5.
That'll be fascinating to watch. To end it off.
What's your pick, Jacklin?
Yeah, what'd you say?
I said Ottawa in 6, so I'm saying it's going to be prolonged a bit. I mean, we're talking about Brendan Othman, Owen Beck here. Who knows if they really turn it on? They got those guys to go on a push here for the OHL championships. It's going to be close. I can't imagine they're going down in 5 games, but crazier things have happened. So
it's the second round. Every one of these series tends to be a little bit more competitive than the first round.
Yeah, generally.
So.
Definitely, Frankie.
Okay, let's head to Barrie and North Bay. This is going to be fascinating. This could be a bloodbath.
I really don't.
I actually don't know. Because it's hard to imagine Brant Clark keeping up his current pace.
Oh, that's not that hard to imagine. Give me a break.
Let's start with this.
You think he's going to have 34 points in 10 games? You think he's going to double his production?
Not that. But he's going to have 15 and 10 probably.
No, look, I'm sure he's going to be good. I'm sure he's going to be great. I'm sure he could even still be the best player in the series. But
here's my thing, though.
You have to pick Barrie. I want to know how many.
I was going to no matter what because I think we're better than North Bay. I think this is a very winnable series for us. Not as going to be easy, but I think it's definitely winnable. So I'm going to go Barrie in. Well, the stress I was with Game 7 was almost here in the first round. So I'm going to go Barrie in 7 because I think we're really evenly matched with North Bay. We went to overtime in a lot of our games against them. Didn't really play them that well, but still went to overtime. I think an important note to make is that we only iced a full-on healthy lineup with everybody in the place that they should be in only 2 of the games in the Hamilton series. So now that we're starting with a fully healthy lineup, similar to Ottawa, I guess, that's going to make a really big difference. And I think North Bay against their series in Mississauga, that was a dogfight. So we'll see.
I have a hot take.
Barrie in 7.
I have a hot take. Barrie sweeps the North Bay Battalion in the second round.
Wowza.
I'm going to go. I'm saying they sweep it. I know I just cast a doubt on Clark, but honestly, even due to just the facts, if they have a fully healthy roster, I mean, Barrie has shown to be great with Clark in this lineup. They have Bo Akey as their, number one penalty killer, second pair guy. That's special. They have threats generally up front. I know
Jordan makes an interesting point.
That's an interesting one.
A fully healthy lineup
North Bay has proven to shown inconsistencies even against a young Steelheads team. What are they going to do against up the likes, of true, premier players in this league? I'm just going to go. I'm putting it out there.
Yeah, I am going to say this one is going 7 games, and goaltenders are big to me. So I'm saying,
it's tough to
North
say.
Bay. I'm not saying this to spite you, Josh. I'm
not even going to disagree.
North Bay wins in overtime in Game 7.
Because if Dom plays the way Dom plays, we're going to be in trouble.
That's why it's tough to predict this week.
I agree with you, Frankie. I don't hate that. So, anyways, Jordan, sign it off.
I wish I was doing it to spite you.
Alrighty, guys. Well, it's going to be
Peterborough.
It's going to be awesome to watch this second round series. We'll be back next week to break it all down, how it has concluded, or maybe it depends when we decide to get on. We'll see. We'll hop on whenever's best. For Frankie and